Today, we're diving into a battle for the last word. It's a story about legacy, control, and two very different memoirs from a mother and her daughter, Priscilla and Lisa Marie Presley. You might know that haunting Elvis song, "Softly as I Leave You." It's all about a final goodbye, about making sure your last words are heard. Well, it seems like now, almost 50 years after his death, Priscilla Presley is taking that idea to heart. Her new memoir is coming out just months after the world finally heard from her late daughter, Lisa Marie. And that really makes you wonder, right? Why this book, and why now? Okay, let's just lay out the timeline here. First, in October 2024, we get Lisa Marie's book published after her death. Then, just 11 months later, Priscilla's book is set to drop. Now, to really understand why that timing is so interesting, we've got to look at the past. Because here's the thing, this isn't the first time Priscilla has been the one shaping the Presley narrative, not by a long shot. When you look back, you start to see a real pattern, a history of her consistently guiding the family's public story. This timeline really tells the story. It starts back in '79 when she becomes co-executor of the estate. Then she turns Graceland into a global brand. Then in '85, she publishes Elvis and Me, which for decades was the narrative. That pattern of control continues right up to 2023 when she challenged Lisa Marie's trust after she died, which brings us right here to this new memoir in 2025. But in October 2024, the script got flipped. Lisa Marie's memoir came out, and for the very first time, we heard her side of the story. And let me tell you, it was a world away from the story we all thought we knew. I mean, wow. This one quote just shatters the public image. Lisa writes that her mom was so unhappy about being pregnant that she actually considered ending it. And for Lisa, the feeling that left her with was simple and heartbreaking. I always felt she didn't want me. For decades, the story Priscilla told was that Lisa's birth was her salvation, the one thing that gave her the strength and purpose to leave Elvis. But Lisa's memory? It paints a completely different picture, one where she felt like a burden right from the very beginning. And that right there is the heart of it all. You have two memoirs describing two profoundly different realities, but they're centered on the exact same life, the same man, and the same home. Just look at how they talk about motherhood. In Priscilla's story, leaving Elvis was this huge act of survival, all to protect her role as a mother. But in Lisa's story, it's a lifelong feeling of being unwanted. So in one version, Lisa is the savior. In the other, she's a burden. And it's the same story when they talk about Elvis. Priscilla remembers a love that was distant, a relationship filled with jealousy and fear. But Lisa, she remembers this incredibly close, devoted bond with her father that she never really talked about before. One felt abandoned, the other felt completely adored. You know, even Graceland, you'd think they were talking about two totally different places. For Priscilla, it was a cage, suffocating with no privacy. For Lisa, it was paradise. It was her own personal playground of magical chaos. For her, it was simply home. And the divorce is another huge point where their stories just don't line up. For Priscilla, leaving was about survival, an act of liberation, and Lisa was her reason for doing it. But for Lisa, it was just devastating. She hated leaving her dad. One woman's freedom was her daughter's heartbreak. So this all brings us right back to Priscilla's new book and its timing. Is Softly as I Leave You really a final, gentle farewell, or is it something else? A rebuttal, maybe? 11 months. That's it. That's the entire gap between Lisa Marie's story hitting the world and Priscilla's scheduled response. And you have to admit, a gap that short doesn't feel like a coincidence. It feels strategic. It feels like a very deliberate move to answer back before Lisa Marie's version of the truth has a chance to settle in. So the big question is Priscilla really leaving softly, like the title says? Or is this her way of loudly reasserting control over a narrative that for the very first time wasn't hers to write? In the end, we're left with two competing truths. And now, history will have to decide which voice is the one that lasts. The daughter who spoke for herself after a lifetime of silence, or the mother who has always been the one telling the story? Because if the long, complicated history of the Presley legacy has taught us anything, it's this. Priscilla Presley doesn't seem to do anything softly. She always seems to get the last word.